With that, happy to take some questions.
Paul.
So
We are listening in live here on LiveNOW from Fox. Secretary Blinken now going to take a number of questions. Some viewers going to first see a 2-minute break, then you'll be right back here live in this press briefing when you return.
So we're in close contact, as I said, with Ukraine's leaders, including, in my case, Foreign Minister Kuleba. We're in close contact with other countries that have, in one way or another, been engaging on diplomacy. And to date, I have to say, on the one hand, we commend Ukraine for being at the table despite being under bombardment every minute of the day. At the same time, I have not seen any meaningful efforts by Russia to bring this war that it's perpetrating to a conclusion through diplomacy. We support Ukraine's efforts to try to de-escalate through diplomacy, to reach a ceasefire, and of course the withdrawal of Russian forces. We appreciate the efforts of other countries, including France, Germany, Israel, Turkey, and others. But again, from where I sit, diplomacy requires both sides engaging in good faith to de-escalate, and I don't see signs right now that Putin is prepared to stop. On the contrary, if you listen to, just for example, his most recent remarks yesterday, that suggests that he is moving in the opposite direction. But never mind the words, what we're really focused on is actions. And the actions that we're seeing Russia take every single day, virtually every minute of every day, are in total contrast to any serious diplomatic effort to end the war. So we're looking to see Russia take meaningful actions to de-escalate, to stop the violence that is perpetrating on Ukraine, and to engage in good faith talks. We will support any effort that Ukraine makes to do that. We're certainly doing everything we can to back them, but also to make sure that they have the strongest possible hand if there are any real negotiations and if diplomacy does advance. Hence the support that we're giving to Ukraine, as well as the pressure that we continue to put and even increase on Russia.
Kylie.
Thank you, Secretary. There is, this department is confirming that an American has died in Ukraine today. So I'm wondering if you can share any more with us about the circumstances, about who that person is, and if there will be specific consequences for Russia because an American died. And then second, earlier this week, you said on CNN that one way or another, Ukraine will be there, and at some point, Putin won't. But we're watching every day, Ukrainians are getting killed, their cities are being demolished. So how can you be so confident to say something like that? And are you suggesting that Putin should be removed as the leader of Russia? Thank you.
Kylie, first, with regard to the American citizen, I can confirm that an American citizen was killed. I don't have any more details for you than that, but I can confirm that. Second, it is, I think, not only clear to me, but clear to the world that an independent Ukraine will be there long after Vladimir Putin. And it's also clear that this could horrifically go on for some time. But when all is said and done, an independent Ukraine will be there, and at some point Vladimir Putin will not. The real question is how much death and destruction is going to occur in the meantime. And we're doing everything we can to bring this war perpetrated by Russia to the quickest possible end. That's where the support for Ukraine comes in. That's where the pressure on Russia comes in. That's where the work, the coordination that we're doing with countries around the world comes in. But I think the world has seen this. The world has seen the absolute determination of the Ukrainian people to hold on to their country, to hold on to their future, to hold on to their freedom. And there is nothing that Vladimir Putin can do to subjugate that to his will. But as I said, this could go on for some time, and we're going to continue to work to bring it to an end as quickly as we can.
And should Putin
Kylie,
remain
we're
the
trying to
leader
move
of
around.
Russia?
Connor.
Mr. Secretary, you described what you called Russia's terror tactics Is the State Department considering designating Russia a state sponsor of terrorism? And then second, everything that you described, the words that the president has used in recent days, war criminal, murderous dictator, pure thug, do you think that there can ever be normal relations between the United States and Russia so long as Vladimir Putin is in power?
So our focus, first and foremost, is on doing everything we can to help bring this war to a quick end, to stop the suffering of the Ukrainian people. That's the result of Russia's aggression on Ukraine. That's our focus. As we're doing that, and as I said earlier, we're also looking very carefully at what is happening, what is being done, and in particular looking at the question of whether war crimes are being committed, and among other things, the intentional targeting of civilians would constitute a war crime. You heard President Biden speak to this yesterday. You heard what I said a few minutes ago. So we are documenting. We welcome the efforts of various groups, institutions, organizations that focus on this to bring all of the evidence together, to continue to document things, and then for there to be accountability one way or the other. In terms of other designations based on actions that Russia is taking, we are and we will look at everything.
Yulia Yarmolenko.
On the second question,
I'm sorry, but remind me.
Just as long as Putin is in power, can there be normal relations between Russia and the United States?
Again, our focus is on ending this war. I don't want to speculate about the future, but there's going to have to be, one way or another, accountability for this war of aggression.
Yulia Yarmolenko, VOA Ukrainian.
So, on possible negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, if Russia agrees to stop attacks and withdraw its forces from Ukraine, are there any security formats that will guarantee that Russia would not renew its aggression against Ukraine? If it's not membership in NATO for Ukraine, then what? And another question, President Biden said that U.S. will accept Ukrainian refugees with open arms. And so far, there is no official visa or other program for Ukrainians who are fleeing war or who want to come to the United States or reunite with their families. Is the Department of State working on some special expedited program for Ukrainian refugees? And if yes, when it might be launched?
Right. Thank you. First, on the diplomacy, look, I'm not going to speculate on the substance of any negotiations, where that might go. As I said, we fully and strongly support whatever the government of Ukraine, the democratically elected government of Ukraine, does. We very much welcome sentiments that we've heard expressed for trying to bring this to a diplomatic end as quickly as possible. I think in the first instance, what Ukraine needs is de-escalation. It needs Russian forces out of Ukraine. It needs to have its basic freedom and independence returned. But I leave it to Ukrainian partners to work on advancing the diplomacy if they believe that can be productive. We will look at whatever we can do to support that. And if there are issues that wind up being negotiated that require in some fashion our participation, of course, we'll look at that and see where we can be helpful. We want to be able, in the first instance, to do what we're doing, which is to support the government of Ukraine, the Ukrainian people, along with putting pressure on Russia. If diplomacy finally carries the day, and there are things that we can do to support that diplomacy and to support any outcomes that restore Ukraine's independence, we will, of course, look at that, and I'm sure do that. With regard to refugees, a couple of things. First, as I said, this is the largest refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. The numbers are staggering. And of course, what gets lost sometimes behind these numbers are the real lives that are at stake and that are being changed, maybe not forever, but are being changed in profound ways. I saw some of that firsthand when I was on the border between Poland and Ukraine with a number of you just a couple of weeks ago, talking to people who had made the journey across the border looking for safety in the face of this Russian onslaught. And in many cases, most cases, women and children, the men staying behind to fight. And we see the impact, of course, in Ukraine. We see the impact on neighboring countries, Poland, Moldova, Romania, others, that are taking in very large numbers of refugees. The generosity, I think, is extraordinary. But the numbers are growing. The challenge is growing. I was on a call, a video conference this morning with our G7 partners. And this is one of the things that we talked about, having a coordinated approach to dealing with and helping refugees coming over. The United States is already and will remain the largest provider of humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. Part of the package that is in the supplemental includes about $4 billion in humanitarian assistance. And that will go both directly to Ukraine. It will also go to neighboring countries and others, and Ukrainians outside of Ukraine to support them. Second, we are working closely with UNHCR to see how we can support this effort. Finally, we're looking at things that we can do ourselves and do directly. For example, looking at steps we may be able to take on family reunification and other things that we can do to be supportive and to really take part in this effort. Last thing I'll say is this. And of course, there is the refugee referral process, but that takes time. But if people apply for refugee status and seek to come to the United States, of course, we will take referrals. But we're looking at steps that we can take in the near term. Last thing is this. I think what we're seeing, at least initially, is that so many people coming out of Ukraine understandably want to stay close to home. We hope, that they'll be able to return home as soon as possible. They also want to stay close to home because, as I said, in many cases, it's women and children who have left behind spouses, husbands, fathers, brothers, and they want to be reunited as quickly as possible. So they want to stay as close as possible. But as this, and if this goes on, as the numbers increase, as the burden increases for European partners, we will certainly do everything we can to help. So I suspect we'll have more to say on this in the coming days. It's something we're very focused on right now.
Time for one final quick question from Andrea.
Mr. Secretary, you outlined, recounted a litany of horrific attacks on civilians. You've said you agree with the president's comment that they are war crimes, as the UN ambassador said last week. I know there has to be an investigation, but where will the accountability be? What should happen to Vladimir Putin if he is found guilty, since he is the state? What should happen to this group? Tell the world.
So, Andrea, a few things. First, we're all seeing what, and you're showing powerfully on television, these devastating images coming out of Ukraine. And we are seeing the destruction of so much of the country by Russian bombs and artillery. We're seeing civilian sites being devastated. We're seeing people being killed. Hundreds, thousands of people, civilians. And yes, as I said, again, as the president said yesterday, in his opinion, war crimes are being committed. I agree with that. After all the destruction that we've seen, it's really hard to conclude otherwise. But what we're doing is this, and I'll come to your question. We are, in the first instance, supporting the very important work that's being done, the evidentiary process, to bring the evidence together, to document what's happened, to support and to work with human rights activists, with civil society, with independent media, as well as with the appropriate organizations and institutions that look into this. So we need to go through this process of compiling the evidence, collecting the evidence, understanding the evidence. We'll share that, and our allies and partners, I'm sure, will do the same with all of the investigations that are ongoing to support accountability using every tool that we have available. I'm not going to get ahead of, first of all, what the outcome will be or what the consequences will be, but I can say with conviction that there will be accountability for any war crimes that are determined to have occurred.
How can you say that after Aleppo and Grozny? He does it repeatedly. He's a repeat offender.
You know,
as a war criminal.
Andrea, when we said before Russia's aggression that there would be massive consequences for that aggression, including unprecedented sanctions on Russia. I know some people had their doubts. I think we've demonstrated that we've been good to our word. When we said that there would be sustained, powerful support for Ukraine and its efforts to defend itself, we've demonstrated that we're good to our word. So when I tell you that there will be accountability and consequences for any war crimes that have been committed, I hope you'll take me at my word, but actions always speak louder than words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.